February must be the month. Okay, so we are now calling to order the February 20th Mobility Advisory Council meeting. And we will now go to introductions of members, first council members, then staff and the public. So I will start and we'll go to my left. So I am Jeff Tom, the chair, and I represent the Capital Chapter California Council of the Blind, and we'll go to my left.
Charles Johnson, MAC Vice Chair, and I represent disabled.
Frank Trujillo. I'm a member of the River City of the Chapter and also National Federation of the Blind of California.
Helen O'Connell, chairperson of TCMP committee, and if you would like to be a vice chair of my committee, I am running for chair. So if you want to run against me, feel free.
Elizabeth. MAC member at large.
Hello, I'm Joseph Wilson. I'm a system change advocate for resources for independent living.
And this is Joe's first MAC meeting, so welcome to you, Joe. He's been here for a few meetings, but this is his first official meeting.
Okay. Welcome, Joe.
Austin Greiner, Accessible Services.
Let's go to Zoom before we go to the rest of the staff. So MAC members on Zoom.
Gene Lozano.
Pam. Hello, Gene.
Go ahead, Pam.
Yes.
We got you.
Gene Lozano, A&I Committee Chairperson.
Okay, and we got Gene. You're going to have to eat that phone of yours, Gene, because we can barely. You're doing good.
It's right
Okay.
against my mouth.
So we have Gene and Pam on Zoom. Anyone else? Any MAC members, other MAC members on Zoom? Okay, so let's go
Gene, would
to
like to
staff
make
in
my
the room.
comment. Jeff,
I'm
could I
sorry.
make a comment first, Gene. I want to apologize to Pam. I did not mean to yell at her. It was right now. It's just trying to be heard, and I apologize to her. My frustration was not with her. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't even notice it. It's so no problem, Gene. We're just trying to connect. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Gene. So let's now go to staff members in the room. Start with Priscilla.
Priscilla Vargas, ADA Compliance Officer and Staff Liaison to the MAC.
I got Austin Greiner, Accessible Services.
Good afternoon. Thomas Russell Jr., Transportation Superintendent, Bus Operations.
Uwe, Police Services, Regional Transit.
Good afternoon. Rowan Brandt, Assistant Planner.
Doug Voska, Police Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Flores, Chief of Staff and VP of Real Estate.
Good afternoon. George Kirbyson, LRV Maintenance Superintendent.
Good afternoon. Vincent Beatty, AVP Operations.
Blanca Araujo, VP Operations. Good afternoon.
James Drake, Senior Manager, Service Planning.
Push it once. Okay. Natasha Leo, Customer Advocate.
Holly Martinez, Senior Customer Advocate.
Okay, do we have any staff members on Zoom?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Sarah Poe with SAC-RT Planning.
Okay, members of the public in the room.
This is Jeff Tartagia, an advocate.
Mike you didn't. Yeah, and we have one more staff person that
That's
forgot
right.
to.
Sorry, Mike, I should have no.
Michael Barnbaum, Transit Ambassador on special assignment, and I'll have an item of information for you on item number 9.
Zoom, though, we have folks, I think. Guests on Zoom.
Okay, any public member of the public on Zoom? Or do we have more on here?
Hello, my name is Diane Olafson, and I'm a committee member for this here.
Oh, Diane.
Okay, hi, Diane.
Yeah, she's on the Mac.
Diane is a member of the MAC. Diane, welcome. If you have a way of, eating your mic or whatever, or turning it up so that when you do talk, we can hear you, that would be helpful as well. Yeah. So welcome to Diane.
To hear me, I'm a deaf individual and I'm using a sign language interpreter to speak for me. It's a gentleman. His name is Arthur. He's speaking for me.
Arthur's speaking for her.
Oh, okay. So if the interpreter if there's a way for you to be a little bit louder.
Okay, I'll turn it up. I'll make it, let's see. Are you able to hear me better? Let's see. How's that? Can you hear me clearly? Is that better?
A little bit.
A little better.
Okay, I'll turn it up even more to the fullest. How's that? That's the best I can do.
Better.
That's great.
Yeah.
Better.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. And again, welcome to Diane. Okay. Do we have other members of the public on Zoom?
Margie Donovan.
Okay, Margie.
Regina Brink.
Okay. Anyone else?
Sarah Kolarik from the city of Sacramento. I'll be presenting with Sarah Poe on an item.
Thank you. Okay, I guess that's it. So the next item of business is approval of the January 16th, 2025 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Pam Floor.
Pam, was that you?
That was me.
Okay, that's what I thought. Is there discussion on the minutes, on the motion to approve? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes say aye.
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 All opposed and abstentions. Okay, we will now go on to item 4, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. We will start this time in the room. So, do we have any raised hands for public comment over Zoom? No hands. Okay, so into the room now. Jeff, get your mic there.
Yes, this is Jeff. Experience this week has been that been reinforced the fact that due to the light rail low floor platforms being roughly 5 minutes late, that a number of people have had the problem of they want to get off and there's not a solution to getting off. I've made now at least 3 reports about the fact that at 29th Street, because they're late, time is short, you don't get off. I've had to go to 39th Street and then turn around and come back. And I'm not the only person that has had this. Had just the experience of getting here that somebody wanted to get up at the county administration building in a hurry. They couldn't get off. The other thing I will say right now is with the alert app saying 5 minutes on the bulletin screen, you have no idea when it is the train is going to arrive. And it's not on your agenda, but will the low floor announcement still take place on the electric bulletin board when you have the service alert going on saying the gold line is 5 minutes late? I will also report that dealing with the alert app, that I've seen up to 40 to 60 messages for light rail. Isn't that too much to try and read to figure out that it's telling you that the train is going to be 5 minutes or later? That's part of my public comment, and we'll leave it at that right now of to letting you know riders are getting concerned about the fact of what is going on, and they're not finding the low floor vehicle that great. My suggestion was that how about we disable the ability, but I'm told that that is way too complicated to put on where the ramp is to be deployed, so the other way cannot override it. But I've seen that happen time and time again where the riders, trying to get off cannot because somebody on the outside has punched. So it's going on. Anyway, that's my comment right now of what is some of the deficiencies of our low flow vehicles.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. This isn't the first time we've heard that comment, by the way. So, all right. Any other public comment?
Am I audible?
Yes, you're on. Go ahead.
It's Margie Donovan. Thank you. I'm on my phone and I'm not seeing a raise hand button. But at any rate, I just want to make a note for the record that I did not receive a Braille agenda again today. I think out of all the times that RT has been attempting to, has contracted to do this, I've only received it once, and I believe it was the last meeting, but don't hold me to that.
Okay, thank you, Margie.
Yeah, Margie, this is Priscilla. We actually did try to get confirmation before this meeting from you and Jeff and Regina. I know Jeff received his. I'm not sure if we heard from Regina. And now you're saying that you hadn't received it. So we're trying our best to get it to you, and you're telling us now that you hadn't received it. So apologies for that.
Yeah, Margie, I just got it yesterday, so I was fortunate enough to just have it done.
I saw Austin's email to me about 5 minutes before the meeting started, ran out and checked the mail, nothing in it.
Yeah. And thank you for keeping us up to date on
And
that.
let me just say, I acknowledge that RT is doing their part. I really want to say that, and I very much appreciate that. It's the vendor that I think might be the problem. That's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone other public comment? Okay, we are now going to temporarily adjourn the full MAC meeting, and at this point, we are going to open a meeting of the Access and Infrastructure Committee for the purpose of electing a vice chair. Jean was elected to be the chair at the last meeting. We need and so I'm going to turn it over to Jean to run a meeting. And also, Jean, if you want to talk about your upcoming meeting in March, either before or after the election, feel free to do that and give that kind of an update as well. So, Jean, the floor is yours.
Jeff, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. First, we decided the election for the vice chair was going to take place at the the A&I committee meeting in March, on March 11th. We were not going to have an election today. And, and so I still need to meet with Priscilla to work out the details of our agenda. I've heard a few things already today. And so that's all I'll say for now.
Okay.
So I guess I should say March 11th, Tuesday, which is the 11th of March, from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. will be our virtual meeting, and it only deals with issues that to do with physical access to facilities and also to vehicles. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gene. So we will consider that meeting as not opened. However, we now will open the meeting of the Training, Communications, and Policy Committee and for election of a chair and vice chair. And since I am both a member, an ex officio member of all committees, and since Helen has expressed a desire to run for chair, for reelection as chair of her committee, I'm going to run that election without objection. So we will now open the meeting and we will open nominations for chair of the Training, Communications, and Policy Committee. And anyone can self-nominate. So we have so Helen, we actually need a nomination for you if you want to run, because it doesn't, you don't get to nominate ahead of time in this format. So
Okay, thank you. I would be more than happy to run as chair of the TCMP for one more term.
okay, so Helen's name has been put in nomination. Are there any nominations for other nominations for chair of the TCNP committee? Are there any nominations for chair of the TCNP committee? And one final time, and if there is, I'll only just say, and then I'm going to recognize maybe Zoom, I can't tell. Are there any nominations for chair of the Training, Communications, and Policy Committee? Did I hear someone on Zoom that wants to make a nomination?
It's Pam Floor, and I was going to nominate Helen.
Okay. That you don't need to, so that's already done. Okay, so hearing no other nominations, is there a motion to declare Helen elected by acclamation?
So moved.
There's a motion, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there we have it. Helen is re-elected as chair of the Training, Communications, and Policy Committee. Now, Helen, you can now take over the meeting for purposes of electing a vice chair for your committee.
Okay, thank you. I'm honored to be able to try and serve for one more term, and I would appreciate anyone that's on my committee to run for vice chair, because I will definitely need assistance this year. And anyone that is willing to help, I would appreciate anybody running for vice chair. Any nominations?
Helen, I have a question. Could
Yes,
you
ma'am.
tell us who the members of the committee are for those that are not familiar with it?
You want Austin to do that, Helen?
Thank you. Could you?
Austin.
Hi, this is Austin. The current members of the TCNP committee are Helen, Jeff, Pam, German, and Melissa.
Anybody willing to run for vice chair? Make yourself known.
I would like to nominate Melissa. to be vice chair of the TC&P committee. Are you willing to be nominated, Melissa?
But I guess I could. Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, Helen accepts. Sorry, that's for you to say, not for me to say.
As I accept your nomination, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
All right.
Then we
I mean,
accept
Melissa has been elected. Thank you,
as
Melissa.
vice chair of the TCMP committee, and I am thankful for the assistance. Thank you very much. This would conclude our special meeting of the TCMP.
All right, thank you. We will now go back to the regular meeting of the MAC. And the first old business item that we have is an XS700 post-launch update. And I'm not really sure who's going to present it, so I'm not going to say that. I'll just turn it over to whoever's going to do it.
Yeah, it's Vincent. Vince Beatty.
All right, Vincent. Vincent, is it true you drove Michael into retirement? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. So good afternoon, Chair and Board. We're going to give you a quick update on the S700s. Right now we have 22 on property, 20 that are ready for revenue service. Also, I'm sorry, I have George Curbison, he's the superintendent of maintenance. He's going to speak on behalf of what Michael would have spoke on. He has got more expertise than I do. So when it comes to that maintenance stuff. So we've got 22 cars on property with 20 ready for service. We have 2 in testing right now. We're slated for about a car every 2 to 3 weeks.
About that, about every 3 to 4 weeks, right?
3 to 4 weeks. One of the things that was mentioned last meeting in November was operators opening all doors due to weather conditions. It might be easier for people to deboard or board. It might be easier for people using the ramp. The reason why we don't do that is due to weather. Inclement weather, rain, get into the LRV. When it's hot, we're losing that AC. And it takes a long time for those cars to build back up the AC. So that's why we don't want to do that. We could do that in peak times. We have with the legacy fleet. And when it's needed, we'll still do that with the S700. We can still do it with S700 during peak time, but it's not going to be something that we do on a normal basis at every station. I know that Frank had a question last time of the low floors going to Folsom. And as we all know, they are going to Folsom. So that's a good thing. There's almost every consist, every train on the Gold Line now is a S700 low floor. Every now and then you might get one because, just like with all of the other, with the rest of the fleet, we still have to bring those S700s in for maintenance and inspection. So we still are limited with our cars because we only have 20 that are good for revenue service. So when those cars do come in for inspection, then we might have to put a legacy fleet. It's not a CAF. Is it a CAF car?
Yeah, it's really CAF.
Yeah, a CAF car out in its place. But for the most part, all of the cars that are on the Gold Line are S700. So that's good. That's a big improvement. I'll let George speak on some of the more technical stuff, like the ramp extensions and the tape switch. Those are things and announcements. Those are things that have come up in recent meetings.
All right. I think most of you know who I am. I think we've met through some of the outreach that we did once we were on board the vehicles. As you know, the the number one reason why we were looking for the low floor vehicles that we have is to provide more ADA access to the vehicles. That was both to be in regulation compliance as well as to provide the community with more options to be able to ride. It allows for far more accessibility than what we have with the legacy fleet, not having to use the mini highs because you can board any car in the consist. We are obviously new. This is our first new vehicle in 20 years, a little over 20 years. So there's growing pains that you have with every fleet you bring on. But in large part, the launch has been quite successful. And where possible, we've tried to take the input that we got through a lot of the outreach that we did with members of the public prior to actually putting them in service. We are still making changes based upon the feedback that we've been getting through different groups, including the MAC committee. I'm sorry. Did you have a question? Okay. Yeah, I'll just go through it real quick, and then if you have questions, I'd be.
Excuse me.
I
I think I'm unmuted and I'm not seeing a mute button on my phone. I'm sorry.
You're not unmuted, Margie. We can hear you.
No, no, no.
Yeah,
I
she
am
realized that.
unmuted and I need to be muted.
Yeah.
I'm going to be
I'll mute
boarding
you,
a
Margie.
paratransit vehicle.
Right. So one of the things that we had incorporated into the new vehicles is a tape switch on the fold-up ADA seats. The vehicles, when they arrived, were in a configuration that we thought could potentially pose a risk, and we made a change to how that tape switch interacted with the door operation. And we had it as more of a inactive switch until the train was in the station at a stop at 0 speed. Then hitting that tape switch would activate the ramp, deploy the ramp, and open the doors to allow somebody that needed the ramp access. Through the feedback that we got, Helen, obviously we had a lot of conversations with Helen and other folks. We have gone back to Siemens and our door manufacturer, which is IFA. They're the door manufacturer for the vehicle. And we are making a change to where that will act as the old stop request that we had on the legacy cars, where you could press a stop request anywhere in the system. It would alert the operator that you're requesting ramp access at the next stop. And it will hold that until the train comes to a stop, and then it will deploy the ramp and open the door. So that is a change that we are in work right now with the manufacturer to rewrite the software. I'm hoping to have that rolled out here in the next couple months. Once the software is written, it's all a matter of how quickly they can write the software. They seem to think it's not that difficult of a change from their engineering perspective. And once they get that software to us, we'll test it on a vehicle, validate it, and we'll roll it out to the fleet. So hopefully by summertime, we'll have that operating as we intend it to operate. The announcements have been an issue with a number of people throughout the community because of confusing language, the length of space between one station to the next, and the length of the announcement being long enough to where it's stepping on another announcement and causing confusion in the communication system. That's an issue that we're currently working with that engineering group for the vendor who is ISC that provides the communication systems on the trains. You've probably noticed, if you're a frequent rider, you've noticed some changes in the number and the audible announcements that are being made, both as the trains are departing the station and in between stations. We've minimized a lot of the cluttered messaging that's been happening that was causing disruptions in the announcements. And that is still ongoing. We've also been working on getting we found a problem as we were doing testing in the field that trains would actually begin departing the station before the train is departing. Alarm announcement, not an alarm, but announcement was being made to let people know that the train was getting ready to go into motion. It's based upon a GPS fence. And what happened was that fence was really wide in the initial software programming. We've narrowed that fence to more of the center of the station to help it have a more accurate location within the station so that it'll announce quicker. So you should be getting the announcement before the train makes any motion at all. So those are a couple of the improvements that we've made. And then I think, and again, with the tape switch, so in addition to it being a stop request for the passengers, it will also alert the operator too. So the operator will be aware and they'll be looking for a ramp deployment and use at that next station. And it will not clear till that ramp has cycled. So.
Okay.
Yeah, passengers, there won't be anything inside the in the train to notify the passenger that there's a stop request. But it will record in the door controller and it will alert the operator. So all you need to do is press the tape switch or activate one of the door operating the ramp request buttons, and it will initiate that sequence. Okay. You have a question, Helen? Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm going to recognize Melissa first as soon as I say that I am pleased at the stop request modification. I think that's a good thing. And I'll have to see how the change in the announcement structure works out. But I'm glad at least that you are really trying to make strides to address some of the issues that have been coming to the map. So Melissa, you first.
Two things. I've gotten pretty good at using the door situation. I'm still having a problem because, and it's really not the people's fault, because on the outside, you cannot see what's going on the inside of the train. It's privacy window or whatever. So if somebody pushes a button on the outside and I'm trying to get off, the ramp doesn't deploy if they push it before I do.
Yeah, so the way that the door system on these cars operates, the ramp has priority on the ramp doors. So if somebody who does not need a ramp deployment activates the door sequence, if you were to press that ramp request button, it will override their request, close the doors, and deploy the ramp and then reopen the door.
That's how it's supposed to work, but that's not how it worked.
So here's the caveat to that. If the doors are open and somebody's already broken the light barrier, which is one of the safety devices in the door pathway, it will cancel that out.
Yeah.
So that's part of what we're looking at with the door control sequence. When we go to this new one, it's going to basically force that ramp to have priority and hold that ramp command until that ramp has cycled. And then it will release the door.
Yeah, because I almost fell out because I didn't notice that the ramp hadn't been deployed until I was really close.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't have very good of a reach. And so in order for me to reach the button, I have to be really close to the edge.
Right.
I was able to back up, but I got lucky. Anyway,
Yeah.
but that's not really what my question was. Believe it or not, it's about another group of folks, and that is the blind folks. I have several friends and also people in the community that are blind that are complaining about that. I'm not, like, if you are a able-bodied person and you walk up the steps, as you walk down, there's a yellow pole that goes across right there,
Correct.
2 inches or so after the stairs. It's in the way. Even able-bodied people are saying, what's it doing there? It's blocking. To me, it looks like it's blocking the way people get on and off. Even one of the, and I don't know his name, it doesn't matter, but one of the guards said, why is it there? It's a hazard.
And I'll tell you, so we did a lot of research on that as well. And we took a lot of input from a large number of people. We also took some field trips to other agencies that have these vehicles and got feedback from their membership and their ridership on the benefits and drawbacks of having that stanchion. So that stanchion is literally for safety reasons for people. It's both a handhold for people that are standing in the ADA area, right? As well as if people are needing assistance alighting or boarding up at that high floor level seating area. So if you notice when that, it's designed so that depending on no matter which side of the LRV that you're looking to exit, whether it be the left side or the right side, you can literally reach your hand directly in front of you, and there's a handhold there that's angled at the right angle to allow you to step down and out of the vehicle.
Well, I'm in a wheelchair, so I wouldn't know, but
Yeah.
it's just really confusing to folks. We all said,
And a
"Why?"
lot of it is too, is this is a new vehicle, right? They've only been in service for not quite a year yet. People are still getting used to them. I will say that over the months that we've been running the vehicle, the number of issues that have been coming up have largely decreased.
Yeah,
as people
no, it's
become
been much better than when I first started.
Yeah.
But I do want to acknowledge you for that. But I've had a couple of people, mostly blind folks or visually impaired, say, "Why is that there?"
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
in the way.
And we obviously had, same thing with the handholds that are on the stanchions walking down the side of the train, right? For me, that's an eye hazard, right? Because it's right in my face. But for people that are below 5'10", they're essential because it's really difficult to reach the height of that stanchion to hold on overhead if you're standing.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was gonna ask if we could move it, but maybe it doesn't need to be moved. Maybe it's just me.
So I have a question as well, Diane.
Okay,
says.
hang on. Any other members in the room? Frank, go ahead. And then Helen.
Good afternoon, you two. I want to say thank you very much because I've also noticed something. Me and some blind members went over and took the 4 rides on the gold light rails now over in Folsom. Those places are awesome and doing very, very well now. So thank you very much on that. We were glad that you finally got to remove the 25 trees to make all that happen, and that's awesome. But there's only one thing that's concern for us. You guys used to say before that you would put information on the ground for blind members that would tell them where door number 1 is and door number 2, but we can't find that. So is that placed down or not placed down yet on the ground? So they know where door number 1 and door number 2, whether it's going east or whether it's coming back west.
It's a good question. That's a good question because we do have door identification above, right? At just above eye level on each of the doors, you'll see a number. That's the door number.
Okay.
But that's not going to help.
Yeah.
Frank, we'll get back to you.
Okay.
We'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a little bit more involved to incorporate into the floor, and there's other things that you'd have to address with that too. But there are door numbers above.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Helen.
Hi. So if I understand this correctly, if I push the call strip, the operator will be notified that that space needs a ramp,
Yes.
and it will not be overridden by anybody coming in?
Right now, it still can. It's my understanding.
Now, well, in a station, it will. If you hit it in a station and the train is stopped, it will open the door. As long as the doors are accessed, it'll deploy the ramp and open the door.
But if somebody is coming in
Yes.
after I pushed the call strip, is that person going to override the ramp coming out?
Only if they've broken the light barrier.
Okay.
If they don't break the light barrier, the ramp has priority. So the programming in the door circuits make the ramp have priority. So it'll force the doors closed and then it will deploy the ramp.
Okay.
And then once the train doors are de-accessed by the operator and the train is getting ready to depart, now if you hit that tape switch under the new software that we're going to be doing, it will hold that ramp has been requested until the next stop. It'll notify the operator with a signal on the screen, the train operator display, letting them know that there's been a ramp requested at that door. And when the train comes to a stop, as soon as the doors are accessed, it will deploy that ramp and open that door.
Okay.
It won't allow somebody to override that until that ramp has fully cycled.
Okay.
That's what you're looking for, Helen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next question I have is, I and many people, when we push the handicap access door on the outside, the buttons flash with around the symbol,
Right.
but there is no audible sound that I can hear
That's
that
coming.
the ramp's coming out.
That change has already been approved by our board and is actually in process with Siemens to be incorporated, where we're actually moving the speaker down
We don't have too many.
to the middle of the door, so you'll be able to hear it from outside.
Okay,
Gene has a
because
question.
that is
Yeah.
extreme hazard,
Yeah, when you get the background noise in the station or downtown, and that's why we've moved it.
even if it's quiet. You cannot hear it from
It's
the
quiet because
inside.
it's coming from a speaker that's actually mounted above the door. And what we're doing is we're moving that down to where it'll reflect outward more.
Right.
So
Would you happen to know if Rick Jennings has seated a subcommittee on the low floor light rail train issues?
not to my knowledge, no.
No, Helen, we wouldn't know.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
that's a quick.
Okay, thank you. So next we're going to hear from Diane. And then Gene.
And then Gene.
Yes, hello. Okay, so my focus is mostly on the deaf and hard of hearing individuals who ride. And I've noticed comments in the announcements will be used with the audio and being able to be heard. Will that be included with captions so that people can see the wording on the light train? And also what was mentioned about the rail ramp or the ramps, will that have also lights flashing to help other people, like deaf people, be able to see that it's activated? Because without
Yes.
that, they won't be able to know if it's activated or not. Just wondering if you have
Yes,
that.
so you have a visual indication inside the train. It will light. It will flash. And the same thing on the outside. When the outside door buttons are pushed, whether it's just for the standard door or the ramp, they will flash to let you know that they're in motion.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Gene.
Thank you. So now Gene.
Okay. A few questions. One, going back to Helen's last question, it was our understanding that separate from the device inside the vehicle, there was going to be a speaker outside of the vehicle that would have a voice announcement. But first, you folks were going to have the speaker and then having a audible sound that later would be replaced by the verbal message that that would give you information that the ramp was being extended, and so that we would still want that, not just relying on a speaker inside. That could be with a very full car, the sound could still be muffled. So that's the first question. What about what we were told was going to occur with an exterior speaker?
So we have a number of things that we've been looking at that are possible moving forward in the future. We're already, believe it or not, even with a new car, we're already looking at some upgrades that we're looking to do across the district that might make that possible to be able to have some additional announcements. Right now, we've really been trying to dial in on our announcements to make sure that the critical announcements are being made properly at the right location, right? And that we're not overburdening people with a litany of announcements that don't really mean a lot. We want those critical safety related announcements to be made, and we don't want to crowd that with anything that's not safety related. So Gene, I will say that while we don't have that right now, I'm not going to rule out that possibility that we might be able to incorporate that in the future. Right now, we're going to see what moving that, moving the speaker down into the location where it'll allow people to understand that the ramp and the door are deploying, see how that is, see what feedback we get then, and then we can move into future options at that point.
I'm going to make a request that I've done for years ongoing, and that is, as you're talking about these internally, please reach out to the A&I subcommittee, and we can have a special meeting to talk about these things so you can get more immediate input, because, you know, you got to take into account a large percentage of the people that have visual impairments also have hearing loss. And that, hearing the sound of the lower speaker may not still work for a large percentage of people. So there needs to be more of a dialogue than learning about it afterwards. And you have, worked with Helen on some of the issues, being proactive, and I compliment that to all staff for doing that. But these other issues should also be treated the same way. And it's more than just one person. I have one concern is about the door if a person who has decided to open the door from outside and has broken the beam, will that mean that the door will stay open to allow anyone else that is following to go in there, or that we're not going to have an override of the ramp that after one person's gone through, they're out of the range of the beam, the door closes as somebody else is boarding as an individual or with a service animal, and then opening afterwards?
Yeah, so
How's that gonna work?
in that situation, as long as somebody doesn't come right behind them, the door has a timer. So the doors will only stay full open for a certain period of time before that sequence for it to close begins. As long as nobody has broken that light barrier in that period of time, the door will cycle and it will close. Now,
Then you can't reopen it again.
I'm sorry?
I let a guy on a bicycle come in and I backed up and let him in. When I tried to push the red button for the ramp to deploy, it wouldn't deploy. I had to go to the next station and come back.
So, and not having all of the details about what occurred, what I think likely happened in that scenario is the doors might have been deaccessed because the dwell time in the station might have been reached. And so once the doors closed, now gave the operator the clearance to move to the next station.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Now, if that hadn't happened, that door would have opened back up.
We don't have to.
I will
But-
reserve the rest
But
of my
again, this
questions.
is one of the reasons why we're coming up with this change to the software related to the ramp deployment. We want the ramp. We understand that it's going to cause some delays in the dwell time in the stations, because if you recall, we made a delay in the operation sequence of the doors to allow additional time for people in wheelchairs to be able to get onto the train.
Okay, I think we're gonna
It's early.
move to members of the public. Just one question per member of the public. Do we have anybody on Zoom with questions? We'll start Zoom this time.
Anyone, Austin? No.
Okay, in the room, members of the public.
Jeff Tartagia.
Okay.
This is Jeff, and I've had the experience at least 3 or 4 times where inside the ramp has not deployed. Fortunately, the operator has come out and told me I have to go to the other door. Now, the problem is with the low floor trains is when you're inside, you can't necessarily get because of other people being in there. So I alert you that there are issues for the inside, and the fact is on the inside, you really can't tell that the ramp is being deployed. It has a very excellent signage up there and the light goes on when it is retracting, but there's nothing to indicate it deploying.
Until the doors are open? And then you.
Opening the door open, I've hit the button in there, either the side or the one that's directly in front of the door. So I'm actually inside activating the alarm system through there. And I've had 3 times now where I've had a operator to come out and tell me it's not working. Ramp is not deploying. And the problem is if you're inside, you cannot get out of the train. So it's the next now you've got to figure out how in the world you get out of that situation. Just a heads up to you is this a situation that clearly is going to be happening in the future. I also, when I'm on the outside trying to get in, I can see where the ramp is deploying. I also can look inside and see that the area around it is full and can go to the other ramp. Deploying the ramp takes an extra minute. Retreating, it takes an extra minute, through there. But inside is now become more critical of trying to get out of the train. And what ends up happening, as I've reported now a couple of times, is I have to go to the next station and wait so I can get out. And fortunately, the operator apparently has filmed a way of cycling it so that the ramp will deploy. But your ramp is not always deploying when you're supposed to, in indication. I will try your new method and see if activating the strip on that side also would say is it feels like the doors, maybe I'm getting weaker, or the doors seem to be, or the seats on the priority seating seem to be getting heavier, one side or the other. That's my other comment to that.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Well, I'll have to look into that a little bit more because there's a lot that before I can really give you a definitive answer on that.
Okay.
Jeff,
Helen, really quick.
one last statement. It is much easier to change things on a piece of paper than it is to change it once you build it. I tried to make that clear to people way before they even assigned it to Siemens. And no one paid attention. Now we have all these issues. So I hope that someone will go through, look at the blueprints, change a few little lines here and there, and save us a big headache later. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Very cogent comment. Okay, we're going to move on to the bus stop improvement plan, heat resilient bus services, and Sarah Poe, senior planner, is back with us. Sarah?
Yes, hello, everybody. Good to be here. Again, I'm Sarah Poe, senior planner with SACRT, and I'm here to present a update on the bus stop improvement plan, which I'll refer to as the BSIP. So the BSIP was developed in 2023. Most of you are probably familiar with that. And the plan included approximately 600 bus stops that we assessed for access and ADA improvements. And also in the BSIP was a list of about 20 shelter-ready bus stops, meaning these are bus stops that do not require any construction or property acquisition. These are bus stops that already have concrete poured, already have the space needed for shelters. We're just needing the infrastructure there. So in May 2024, last year, we applied for a climate resiliency related grant through the State Office of Planning and Research in their Climate and Innovation Unit. And the grant program, it's called the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program. And the program is specifically for funding heat resiliency projects. So we applied for a project to study heat resilient shelter designs and to purchase new heat resilient bus shelters. I did present that item last year when we were in the process of applying for the grant. So I'm happy to report that we were awarded, and that award came late August. The time between then and now, we've still been working through contracting and agreements. So the project hasn't officially kicked off. Still working through those agreement processes, but we expect to begin in earnest this summer once everything is all worked out, all the agreements and contracts are executed and are in place. As I mentioned, the project will study different heat resilient shelter options. We'll collaborate with our subcontractor, with stakeholders, and the community on different shelter design options. A preferred design will be selected with community input, and then we'll move on to purchasing and installation at the locations that are identified in the BSIP as being shelter ready. There's also a data collection element that I'm really excited about in this project, and that'll be accomplished through a partnership with the Air District. The Air District just received this really cool tool. It's called the MARTI tool, And that particular piece of equipment collects data related to extreme heat and ambient temperatures and other kinds of data that we'll need for this project to be able to report on the before and after conditions. And it'll help us to be able to see how these new shelters will actually improve extreme heat conditions. So I'm really excited about the use of that. We always have our own ridership data, and that's always a good indicator of activity that's happening at bus stops. But I'm really looking forward to be able to take advantage of this other new really cool tool. So that's kind of a really brief general overview of the project that's still coming up. Like I said, we haven't kicked it off quite yet, but that's the work plan. That's what it's looking like as of now. And I suspect probably late summer would be a good time to circle back with them back and give another update on where we're at with the project. We'll be out doing some data collection, and we'll be gearing up for presenting some shelter options and shelter designs to the community. So I think that'll be a good opportunity to come back to the MAC and talk to you guys again about the project.
Okay, thank you,
Any
Sarah.
questions
So
I
this
can
time we'll start with MAC members on Zoom with any questions. Sorry. Any hands on Zoom?
No.
Okay, MAC members in the room, any questions? Helen?
Hello. I am glad to see that the transportation people are finally realizing that, and the state is finally realizing that California has an exorbitant amount of hot days, and is trying to correct things so that people don't pass out. Could I please have the name of the program that you guys got the money, or whatever the title of the thing is, so that I can mention it to the board of directors?
Yeah, the program, it's Extreme Heat Community Resilience Program, acronym EHCRP. And that's through the State Office of Planning and Research.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else in the room? Okay.
Hello, this is Joe. Could start with a question. It's more of like a comment. I think there's actually sorry, it's an excellent idea. Just because I've heard from like individuals in the community, it's somewhere in this room too, where it's like you have 100 for like a triple digit day, because you're sitting at a bus stop and your stop gets delayed. Yeah, it can be pretty rough sitting there in triple digits. So, yeah, that's a great idea, actually.
Yeah, and one of the things that we'll really be doing and working with our contractor on is looking at our peers. What transit agencies and cities that, are in Arizona and Las Vegas, what are some of the things that, what's the equipment that they are looking at or that they currently use? And there's experts out there that will need to be coordinated a lot with on this project. But yeah, that's definitely a very important piece to making sure we get it right.
Okay. Now, any members in the room from the public?
Gene first.
Oh, okay. Gene, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Jeff?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I was wondering, this project, I might have missed it, what will it also address issues to do with the other extreme, whether the wind and rain and the coldness? Will the shelters be looking at the design and orientation of the shelter so that it protects people from the wind and rain and the generally coldness?
Yeah, those are definitely very important considerations, especially if we're looking at selecting one uniform design to continue to use as we purchase new infrastructure altogether. The purpose of this particular program and funding is related to heat resilience. But, I don't know, there could be some equipment and some infrastructure out there that incorporates all of those different types of extreme weather conditions. We actually have an item coming up on the agenda, a new business item. We'll talk a little bit more about climate hazards and impacts of all kinds of different weather conditions to the transportation infrastructure, just in general, not just bus shelters. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Jean. We'll consider, more than just heat, but that's the main specific focus of this program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any members of the public in the room with questions? Jeff?
This is Jeff Tartagia. I just recently was on this 77 bus route, and I've seen in a number of places where question mark is how much glass are you using? I find YOLO's bus stops to be far more efficient and more helpful in doing the basic job of protecting the individual. Because when it rained, it is appreciated not being stuck out there at a bus stop. My question, Sarah, is how much glass is being used in this weatherproofing versus, grates and everything else to be used to protect and offer you the best protection for the weather conditions?
Glass specifically, glass as the material being on the shelter?
I'm wondering how much is there, because you've used a lot of it in the existing structures and it keeps constantly getting broken.
Yeah, we have yet to study the options for shelter design, but that does typically become a maintenance issue. So, we'll have our maintenance folks also working with us, looking at the different options, and that will be something that will be considered closely when we're selecting a shelter option. We're also going to present the different options and ideas to the community too. So we'll be able to get, that'll be another touch point for you to give us your input on what's preferred and what's not and what's ideal.
Okay. Any members of the public on Zoom?
No hands on Zoom.
No hands. All right. Thank you, Sarah. You're
welcome.
We'll move on to new business. Our first item is SACRT surplus property sales update. Chris Flores, Vice President of Real Estate. Chris?
This on. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see the MAC board again. I'm Chris Flores, Chief of Staff and VP of Real Estate here at Sacramento Regional Transit. And so here I want to talk a little bit about some parcels that SACRT board has approved for the sale that in our November meeting to a affordable housing developer. And I'll go to the next slide and I'll showcase which these parcels are. So there are 9 parcels that SACRT put up for sale. All total, these 9 parcels are about 1.88 acres. They're located along 29th Street, N Street, O Street, and P Street. This was previously SACRT's administrative campus, and it housed the buildings that commonly we refer to as engineering, finance, hallcraft, old admin, and main admin. As a reminder, we have consolidated under a favorable lease our administrative staff here in the Q Street building, and we have consolidated our bus operations into main admin. You can see it says on the chart bus there. And this is really all of a part of a long-term strategy as we go to a zero-emission bus fleet as mandated by the state of California, which I'll talk about on the next slide, please. So SACRT is mandated to go to a zero emission, 100% zero emission fleet by 2040. In 2022, our planning department conducted a zero emissions facilities master plan and identified the need for 2 large garages to meet SACRT's zero emission bus operational requirement. The report called for a facility in the north part of the county and one in the south part of the county to better ensure coverage and to reduce deadheading. Last July, we were fortunate enough to receive a $78 million federal low-no grant to help retrofit and build out our bus maintenance facility at McClellan Park in the north. The current bus maintenance facility in Midtown right there, which has not been put up for sale, it will need to be operational for at least another 10 years as we transition from a CNG fleet to a zero emission fleet. But kind of exasperating some of the needs to relocate out of the Midtown facility is that Caltrans has recently updated their guidance to airspace, basically what can be stored underneath their freeways. And they have proposed prohibiting electric buses if you don't get various waivers from the federal fire marshal, from Caltrans, and some others. So it certainly will be a process. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the state of California law that dictates when public agencies want to dispose of their property. They must follow the California State Surplus Lands Act. And if the property was used with federal funds to purchase, we must follow FTA guidance as well when we dispose of the property. So the SLA, Surplus Lands Act, it dictates that when selling a surplus property, a public agency must first make it available to affordable housing sponsors or public agencies for the following purpose: low or moderate income housing, park or rec and open space, school facilities, or public agencies for public purpose. The California Housing and Community Development Agency provides the regulatory oversight of the SLA, and we had routine meetings with them during this process of the sale. Next slide. So just a little bit more on the Surplus Lands Act process. First, an agency must put out a notice for 60 days to affordable housing and public entities. Following that 60 days, the agency must negotiate for at least 90 days in good faith with any responsive parties. If no agreement is reached with an affordable housing developer, we can then entertain offers for public agencies for a public use. And if no sale is made at that point, the SLA process is considered complete, and the property can then go to an open market. In the event that, and this is probably more information than you need, but in the event that a disposing agency receives multiple offers, the local agency shall give first priority to the project that will generate the highest number of affordable housing units, as long as no less than 25% of those total number of units are deemed affordable. But the SLA doesn't restrict an agency's right to seek fair market value. But there are harsh penalties up to 30% for the first one and 50% of the sale for second one should you not follow the SLA guidance correctly. So next slide, please. And just a little bit about our timeline here. So for background, the SACRT board approved surplusing these parcels back in July of 2023. In January 17th last year, we issued that 60-day notice of availability starting that clock. After those 60 days, SACRT received 19 entities that responded to our NOA. So immediately on March 18th, we sent out asking for additional details for all those responsive parties, such as offer price, site proposal, financing, closing guidelines, and additional details. And since that time, we were negotiating with those proposals. And we took the item, a proposal, to the August 24th closed session, getting direction from our board. And then it went to our November 18th open session. Next slide, please. So our notice of availability in January did stipulate a few key items that we were looking for. We are seeking fair market value for these properties. The FTA must approve of any disposition of these properties. We prohibited development that was not transit supportive because of the proximity to light rail. And as I mentioned before, we requested a lease back of 1429th Street, which is the main admin building, for up to 10 years at no cost to SACRT, as the building currently houses critical SACRT operations. And then to minimize SACRT's transaction costs, our preference was to sell all 9 parcels in a single transaction if possible. Next slide. So at the November board meeting, the board did approve to enter in a purchase sale agreement with a group called The Code Solution, who is headquartered in Los Angeles, with construction partner here in Sacramento. They are offering to purchase the property for $15.6 million for all of the parcels, which is about $1.4 million above the appraised value of those parcels. They're proposing to build 304 units on the property, 100% affordable by Surplus Land Act definition, and they will allow SACRT to continue to occupy main admin for 10 years at no cost, an estimated value of close to $2.5 million. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about their offer. They would plan to develop these in 3 phases. So one really starting with the finance building property, then moving more towards engineering, and then moving towards Hallcraft old admin and main admin where they have to honor that 10-year lease. You can see the AMI breakdown, average median income breakdown of their units on the screen. And like I said, that is 100% affordable by Surplus Lands Act guidance. All 3 of these developments would have a ground floor retail, some on-site parking, and would contain a mixture of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. And next slide. The next slide just shows a couple pictures of some of the projects they've done in California. They've mostly been in Southern California. You can see on the left-hand side, that is the Solaire Apartments. It was on top of they worked with LA Metro and built a 186 unit apartment on top of a bus transit center, an LA Metro stop. And then on the right-hand side, that's a 227 unit senior low-income unit in Oxnard. So last slide, please. So to summarize, the staff received the board approval of the purchase sale agreement on November 18th of last year. We probably in record time for the Housing and Community Development Agency received their approval that we did abide by the SLA guidelines on December 11th. And we are targeting opening escrow in about a week, March 1st of this year. So we know the developers are already been meeting with the city, talking about entitlements and wanting to move quickly, hoping to maybe start construction about this time next year. And like I said, SACRT administrative staff has been relocated here as well, but we will be then reconvening the subcommittee of the board to look at a south area bus maintenance facility as we look to transition to zero emission. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. We'll start in the room, 1 question per member, because we want to have a couple of other items to do as well. So any questions in the room? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question that, what are the financial gains going to be basically focused on being used for?
Yeah, so like I said, SACRT will get $15.6 million in proceeds from these sales. We are determining the funding source that we receive to purchase these various parcels. When there is federal interest, there is certain restrictions that haven't, but more than likely, most of this funding will go back to help support capital projects.
If you're going to have capital projects, you need to take into consideration who is going to operate all the stuff, because if you don't pay them, they won't run and they'll sit in the parking lot. Just a comment. Thank you.
Always need to think about operations. I appreciate that. And most likely it will be used to help build out a new bus maintenance facility. I can't guarantee that. I have to talk to grants, but that most likely, so not new operational costs.
Okay, anyone else in the room? Okay, Zoom? Gene, go ahead.
The 3-part question, Chris. I think it's the Hallcraft building, and I could have the name of the building incorrect, but that building was on the city registry for historical buildings because it was the site of the original transit red line way back in the 1800s. what is going to happen to that? How the historical status? Did the preservationists object to the destruction of that building because of its historical meaning to Sacramento? And they were for a while, the red cars, bits and pieces that had been purchased, including intact cars, were being stored there. What's going to happen to all those vehicles or parts?
So thank you. Yeah, we don't store any vehicles in the Hallcraft at the moment. I don't know if we ever, since I've been at SacRT, I haven't ever seen vehicles stored there. To your point about the historical connection, certainly you are right in that assessment that this has a significant transit use in the past, where it was the Sacramento Transit Authority and actually the old PG&E streetcar facility. We did look at the city records. It is not tagged as a historical property, so potentially there could be opposition from like some preservation groups, but it is not something that they can't demolish.
Okay, then what's happened to? Okay, you're saying as far as you've been there, they didn't store the red cars. So where? And those were the original companies way back in 1800. So where are those then located?
I might need more explanation. The red cars, are they train cars or are they buses?
So they are the very beginning streetcars that the gas.
So we
and electric
moved,
company-
there was 4 that we had up at, we moved to McClellan Site Bus Maintenance Facility. We still have 1, but 4 of those have been donated to the Western Railroad Museum and are being rehabbed to be displayed at their museum. If I'm talking to the right ones.
Sounds right. And one of them had been at I think Fish Grotto. It was a restaurant on J Street, and the people used to be able to eat inside the car.
Oh yeah, the old spaghetti factory. My favorite car to eat in.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other members on Zoom? Okay, members of the public, start with Zoom. Who? No? No, okay. Anybody in the room? All right. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
We'll now go to SACADAPT, Transportation Infrastructure Adaptation Plan. And it's, I hope I'm pronouncing the name, Sarah Kolarek, Sustainability Analyst.
That's a mouthful, isn't it, Jeff? This is Sarah Poe. I'm going to just simply introduce the agenda item and the presenter. The item, it's a Transportation Infrastructure Adaptation Plan, which we're calling SACADAPT. And SACADAPT is a plan that is going to study how extreme weather conditions and climate hazards impact the transportation infrastructure in Sacramento. SacRT is partnering with the city on the plan, which is funded by a Caltrans Planning Adaptation Grant. The city is the lead on the project, and the project manager, Sarah Kolarek, is with the Office of Sustainability at the city. She's here to present the project in full with you guys. So I will now pass it on to Sarah Kay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, we've got the leading duo of Sarahs on this.
2 Sarahs.
So I do have some slides. Excellent. Thank you, Priscilla, for bringing up that slide deck. Excellent. So just to reintroduce myself, so my name is Sarah Kolarek. I am a sustainability analyst with the City of Sacramento's Office of Climate Action and Sustainability. I'll just apologize in advance for the fact that my throat is a little scratchy. I'm recovering from being sick, and so I am not able to speak at full volume. Please let me know if I'm not speaking loud enough. And if I need to pause to cough briefly, I apologize, but I wanted to be able to present, though certainly not in person at this moment. So let's see, Priscilla, do you need anything from me on the slide deck, or you?
I think we're good. Austin's just queuing it up. We're good. Thank you. You want to have it in presentation mode?
I think presentation mode would be great. And so we can go to the next slide. Before I get into a lot of details about this transportation adaptation plan, I want to first give a little bit of context about our Office of Climate Action and Sustainability within the city of Sacramento. So we have 3 key goals within our office. And so on the next slide, we have a pie chart or a Venn diagram showing our 3 key goals. So we have, first of all, reducing our impact, which in our line of work, it's focused on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change, as well as other sources of pollution. And so we call that climate action. And if you click forward one, that will pop up onto the screen. Our second key goal, which this plan really works on, is preparing for change. So for us, that is adaptation, making sure we're building resilience, adapting to short and long-term changes that include extreme heat and extreme storms. And then the third key goal of ours is helping the most vulnerable and making sure that we are equitably bringing resources, grants in particular, other access and opportunities to where they're most needed, and certainly rectifying as best we can the fact that there's a lot of historical inequities that we're working against. And these 3 goals kind of come together to ultimately aim to improve quality of life. So if you click forward one more, that is kind of our central tenet and goal of our office's work. So with this transportation adaptation plan, we are really bringing together all 3 elements. Looking to prepare our transportation system for change, specifically extreme weather, making sure we're doing that in an equitable way. And we will be looking at cars, but also really emphasizing public transportation and active modes of transportation, walking, biking, rolling, since there's a large population in Sacramento that doesn't have access to a vehicle. And then, of course, reducing our impact is a key piece, making sure that we're shifting away from polluting modes of transportation and can have comfortable year-round access to public transportation and other active modes of transportation. So the next slide has kind of 4 big images. So I'll go around, I'll talk about each. And these images capture the types of extreme weather that we are focused on in this plan. So in the top left, there's a photo of Sacramento's Tower Bridge, beautiful kind of sunset. Also some trees, but there's pretty exposed areas. It would get pretty hot on a summer day. And as part of that photo, we also have a snippet of a temperature sensor from someone's front yard where it was reaching 123.4 degrees on a summer day in an unshaded area. So certainly extreme heat is a top concern, an increasing concern that we're seeing in Sacramento. The top right image shows flooding concerns. So it's an image of the Sacramento River at a very high river level, almost reaching the bottom of the Tower Bridge in the photo. It also shows the river walkway and some stairs on the West Sacramento side that are completely inundated and inaccessible because of intense rain that has led to high river flows and dam releases to make sure we're protecting the city with our flood mitigation measures. Bottom left photo shows a downed tree and street light from the extreme storms we experienced in early 2023 with the very high winds. And this large tree is fully blocking a road That was something we dealt with quite a bit during those storms and any other big storms. And then finally, air quality and other impacts from regional wildfires, smoke, et cetera. That's an increasing concern that we're facing as a result of climate change. So none of these impacts, extreme heat, extreme storms, or air quality, none of this is new to Sacramento, but it's becoming more frequent and intense, and we want to make sure we're looking ahead. And I'll just prompt everyone to think to themselves at this moment of a time when you were getting ready to leave your home and you faced one of these impacts and couldn't get to where you needed to go, or perhaps just experienced significant delays. I'm guessing everybody has probably had some type of experience like that. I certainly have, and we want to make sure we're able to provide redundancies in the system and additional investments to help reduce the frequency. Of course, the goal is to eliminate all types of barriers, but really just make big, meaningful progress through this plan. So the next slide highlights the key goals of this plan. Big picture, it's to prepare our transportation system for these types of extreme weather events. So extreme heat and storms, smoke, potentially extreme cold, with a focus on all modes. Being a plan that is led by the city, we are primarily focused on the city of Sacramento and all SAC-RT infrastructure within the city of Sacramento. But we are also looking at all RT rail lines, light rail lines that extend outside of city boundaries, as well as other key maintenance facilities that RT has outside of the city. With this analysis of current and expected increases in extreme weather, we will then build recommendations for policy changes, maintenance changes, and identify future projects that we can then be ready to get grants to help be able to finish, design, and implement those projects. So some example recommendations, if you can go back to the previous slide, thank you. Types of recommendations that we might have may include recommending different materials for when we build or maintain, for example, streets or sidewalks, or it could be things that are prone to being knocked down by wind. There may be different design specifications we want to use. We may identify key pieces of infrastructure that need to be built new or relocated. I will note that we're not identifying things like new light rail lines or new bus routes, new sidewalks through this plan. I know RT has their process for planning RT infrastructure and routes, and then the city has a separate process actually happening now, the Streets for People Active Transportation Plan, that is focused on identifying needs for new sidewalks, new bicycle lanes, etc. So we're leaving that analysis to that plan, but we are looking at where bigger types of infrastructure may be needed for redundancies in our transportation system, for flood preparedness, and general resiliency. And then, as I mentioned, there may be recommendations we come up with that are related to changing our approach to maintenance and operations to be more prepared. So the next slide has our timeline of how we will develop this plan. We are currently in the first stage of analyzing current and expected future extreme weather risks to our transportation system. This also includes identifying ways that different types of infrastructure are sensitive to different types of extreme weather. Similarly, there's different parts of Sacramento that are more vulnerable to different types of extreme weather. Then in mid-2025, so in the coming months of this year, we will be using this initial analysis to identify and then prioritize recommendations. And then early next year, we will be culminating the process by finalizing the plan, bringing all of the information together. And throughout this process, we are seeking public community input at key points throughout the plan, as well as agency feedback from the city, from RT, and other regional entities to make sure that we are on the right track. And we are in this first phase of outreach, and so that's a key reason why we want your help and why we are here this afternoon. So we have an online survey that on this next slide, there's a QR code if that's your preferred way of filling out a survey. We will share the link that's available to take the survey online. The survey is also available in paper copies at all Sacramento community centers. The deadline for the survey is March 5th. You can stay up to date with the Sustainable Sacramento monthly newsletter that our Office of Climate Action and Sustainability puts out every month. It's short and it will include highlights about this plan and other key pieces of work that our office is doing. So the link is on the slide. It is at cityofsacramento.gov/sustainability-news, and you can sign up for the newsletter there. We also
And we can have Priscilla send that link out, correct? We can work with that. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, that'll be great. I'll make sure that I send links to Priscilla, and thank you, Priscilla, for helping share that information. And then we have an in-person workshop actually tonight, and this will be in partnership with the city's monthly City Connect Mixer. It's from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at 524 Mexican Food, which that's the restaurant name. It's on Northgate Boulevard. There will be some free refreshments, and you'll be able to talk to members from the city, RT, and the consultant team. I will not be there since I'm at home sick, but other knowledgeable folks will. So with that, you can go to the next slide. Thank you so much for allowing us to bring forward this presentation. I would welcome any comments or feedback. You can send it either to me at skolaric, my last name, it's in the slide deck, at cityofsacramento.org, or Sarah Poe. Also, you can reach out to her with any comments and she'll make sure that she gets it to the project team.
Great. Thank you so much for that excellent presentation. We can have about 5 minutes for questions, because we want to get on to our last item of business. Any board members in the room first?
Me.
I should say a council member. Sorry. Ellen, go ahead.
You said that there was a mandate for the percentage that they needed to reach. What was that percentage that they were supposed to reach for climate control?
Oh, okay, yes, for climate. So we have, the city has a climate action and adaptation plan that identifies for ourselves key goals of how many of our trips we want to be shifting to public transportation, as well as to modes like walking, biking, rolling, ultimately just not being in a car. And so the goals, off the top of my head, it's possible I'm remembering these incorrectly, but it's 11% for public transportation. And as of about almost 10 years ago, we were at, I think, closer to 2 or 3%. So 11% is actually quite a big goal. And then for active transportation, it's 6% in 10 years, and then I think maybe 10 or 11% in 20 years. So these are like 2035, 2045 goals. And similarly, we were at around 2 or 3%. So that also is a very big goal, which of course, we need to be able to have year-round access to public and active modes in order to have any shot
Okay.
at reaching those goals.
Okay.
Thank you.
Charles is next.
Yes, Sarah. Are you in communications with SACOG on this project?
Yes, a member of SACOG is part of our technical advisory committee for this project and is helping review key deliverables. And we have regular checkpoints with them, as well as other key staff from RT and key staff from the city covering a range of departments.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else in the room? Any other members? Anyone on Zoom, MAC members?
Gene,
Okay, Gene?
I was interested in the survey. If the survey entails dealing with any maps at all, and if so, how are you going to make the survey fully accessible to those who use screen reading software? And I guess the last part of this is for individuals who cannot work with electronic version of a survey or a paper copy, is there any way that they can call in and talk to somebody and get the survey filled out? And I'm assuming that this survey is not limited to residents of Sacramento, but is anyone in the users of public transportation.
Thank you for your questions. Yeah, the survey does not include a map. There is a question that relates to if you've experienced issues with extreme heat or flooding, then type in the location, the address or description. But we don't have a map. It's all kind of like check the box or write a response.
Okay, good.
For your question about talking with someone, absolutely reach out to either Sarah Poe or myself. Both of our emails are included on the last slide of the materials, and that I'm hoping Priscilla is able to include that in follow-up materials, and we would be happy to set up a time to talk with you.
All right. Any other members on Zoom?
The third question.
Oh, sorry.
I was just catching myself. The third question, you are absolutely right. We're not limiting this to City of Sacramento residents. We are welcoming responses from anyone who is spending time in Sacramento and experiencing our transportation system. Walking, biking, public transit, driving, etc.
All right. Any other members on Zoom? Okay, so we are now, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. We'll have to keep up with the progress. And we're going to move on to our final business item, the SAC-RT emergency preparedness presentation. Two gentlemen from police services. I know I'm going to slaughter this first name, Mark Sakauye and Doug Vasca. So gentlemen, take it away.
Chair Tom, members of the MAC and members of the public, my name is Doug Vasca, and by way of introduction, I have been working at or for regional transit since July of 1993 in various capacities and positions. And that was when Mark Sakauye, who is over in the corner there, started the police services unit. So I've been here a while, but not as long as Mark has. And if you ask me really difficult questions, I will refer to him because he has forgotten more about emergency preparedness than I have ever learned. So, first slide. We could probably go on to the second slide. These are the topics we're going to talk about in our short time together. The goals for regional transit preparedness levels, basics of emergency management, transportation in emergencies, coordination with other agencies, and the training exercises that we have conducted. So our goals at SACRT, next slide, are three, and they're fairly simple. The goal is for employees to take care of ourselves and our families so that when a disaster hits, and since we're not in Southern California, we're not in Florida, we'll use flooding because that's the most likely disaster we will face. When a flood hits, we will be assured that our family is taken care of, and then we can respond to take care of the district. For example, if turns out the buses are in a low area and we need to move them to a higher area, we will respond, move those buses, and then we are in a position to respond to assist other agencies, the county or the city. Next slide. That photo, by the way, is on Morrison Creek, bridge over Morrison Creek when we were preparing for a full-scale exercise in 2015. Next slide. So these are different levels of preparedness. And you can see from the first one, it's no training, no equipment, no nothing. Our goal is to bring RT up to the second level and the employees up to the second level, where we are able to respond and provide support. You get farther down the list, police and fire are trained to like a secondary level, able to provide initial response. And then if it gets worse, you have a hazmat situation with fire or explosive ordnance, basically bomb squad situation with police. And if it really gets bad, then we have to call in the 95th Civilian Support Team. And these CTs are around the country. These locations are around the country. You see a map there in the middle at the bottom. We've got 2 locations in California, one in Hayward and one in LA. And the patch on the far right is for the radiological assistance program. And if we have a nuclear device, someone has a nuclear device, then we have to call in that team, and that is their specialty. Next slide. We are part of the evacuation plan for the County of Sacramento, City of Sacramento, Yolo County. And so we are prepared to assist them, but we don't have to assist them. Depending on what the request is, we can say no. If we just don't have the ability to do it, we don't have the equipment to do it, we just think it's going to be too dangerous for our folks. Now, Government Code 3100, California Government Code 3100 defines what a disaster service worker is. And those are public employees who have taken an oath to respond in these situations. But regional transit employees don't have to say yes. Next slide. So how do we assist other agencies? How do we assist members of the public? Our specialty is transportation. So we may transport members of the public. We may transport emergency personnel, fire, police, or supplies. And primarily will be used for evacuation, but sometimes we could be used in a rescue rescue effort. Sometimes we could be providing shelter. If it's really hot out, really cold out, other inclement weather, we could provide shelter in our buses. And sometimes we'll even get an unusual request where we have to protect the President of the United States. And back post 9/11, Mark Sakaui, minding his own business, got a phone request from the Secret Service and said, basically, we need a number of buses, 16 buses, to protect the president from a weakness in their security plan, which was from a truck-borne explosive device. So we got 16 volunteers, never wavered in their desire to protect the president, and it went off without a hitch. And sometimes we provide equipment. If it's going to be unsafe for one of our drivers or a number of our drivers to drive a bus in an area where we think the bus could help, we may provide those buses under an agreement so that others who are properly licensed can drive them themselves. Next slide. After the famous Oakland Hills firestorm in 1991, a number of problems in the response were identified. Things like leadership, who's in charge? Does everybody know that? Compatibility of equipment, compatibility of communications. A number of these things were identified, and so a California bill was passed to fix these, to ensure that we developed this incident command system, we call it ICS, and we'll see on the next slide, we'll see a little bit more about that. It defined and how we would do multi or interagency coordination, things like mutual aid, and developed the operational area concept, which involves all 58 of California's counties. In the middle photo below that, you'll see the areas in our region, our California region, that are in the same one as Sacramento and Sacramento RT. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a map of all 6 regions in California. So the FEMA thought so much of our plan in California that they adopted it for the national plan, and they called it the National Incident Management System, or NIMS. Next slide. So this is a more fleshed out version of the Incident Command System org chart. And the question would be, where do we fall? Where does SAC-RT fall on the org chart in a disaster, or where we have been called in to assist in some form or fashion? So the answer is, it depends. If we are the operation, if the operation is to evacuate people from a certain area, then we would probably fall into operations, which is on the left side of the chart where that left arrow is. If we are just assisting in an operation, for example, it's a large fire, it's a law enforcement situation, and we're assisting with shelter or evacuations as part of the process, then we would likely find ourselves on the right-hand side under logistics. So operations versus logistics. Next slide. So this is some additional information on disasters and emergency preparedness. So first question is, who declares that? Well, it depends how big the disaster is. If it's just limited to the city, then the city manager would likely do that. If it's in the county, then it could be the sheriff, depending on what kind of situation it is. It could be the county administrator. And if it's statewide, then it would be the governor. Now, that doesn't mean the governor is going to be the incident commander of the situation, but he would ultimately be in charge. And there's advantages to declaring a state of emergency in that you have more resources available, there's more authority attributed to that, as well as some funding options that would otherwise not be available. Again, it depends on how big this is, whether it's going to be local, county, state, or national. And then the difference between a rescue and evacuation. As I mentioned earlier, most of the time, regional transit will be used for an evacuation, but sometimes we could be utilized in a rescue. For example, if the floodwaters were rising and we were trying to evacuate people, once they got to a certain level, then it may turn into a rescue. With regard to self-evacuation, the experts believe that, same slide though. The experts believe that about 75% of people will be able to self-evacuate. 20% may need a little bit of assistance, and 5 will need quite a bit of assistance. So people who are at risk, who are mobility impaired or otherwise, it's important for them to take or to make plans in advance, to take precautionary plans. So when we get a warning or an optional evacuation, that's the time when people who are going to be at risk should take note and exercise that option then, as opposed to waiting until there's a mandatory evacuation, because you have a lot less time to react to that. Some questions in the past have been raised about, well, couldn't we just have a list of everyone who is at risk, and then they could be on, we could just refer to that list when evacuations are needed. And that's problematic for a number of reasons. One, it depends on location. It depends on, what type of disaster it would be, what type of declaration it would be. And then finally, in this age of finding out that our personal information has been cracked, hacked once again, we certainly don't want to have personal information out there any more than it has to be, because with a medical situation, you have HIPAA protection, but you wouldn't have that kind of protection here. So you wouldn't want your information to be out there any more than it has to be. Next slide. So I touched a little bit about individual preparedness, but it's important to understand our individual risks, our individual vulnerabilities. And it could be that we have some medication that has to be refrigerated, could be insulin. And if we lose power, what's our plan, our backup plan for that? Maybe you have battery backup, maybe you have a generator, maybe you have a friend who's going to help take care of you. But now's the time, before you need it, to make those plans, to be prepared. Again, you want to have the maximum amount of time from once you realize there's a problem or a potential problem coming to when you need to actually take action. You want to minimize the impact that's going to have on you. And whether you shelter or evacuate, that's going to depend on the circumstances, the time frame you have, and your ability to do either. And your decisions will likely be based on how severe the situation is and how long it's expected to last. Next slide. So these are some of the concerns. What is RT's role in an evacuation of people with disabilities and senior citizens? And it depends. If we're doing normal revenue service or other normal service that RT does, then we have policies and procedures for that. But if we're part of a disaster declaration and we are falling under an incident commander, then we do what their requirements are, what they need us to do. That's why they called us. But we have prepared for this role. I showed you a couple of slides with some pictures on it. We do an annual exercise. And in the past, when we had grant funding, we did full-scale exercises with, trains, buses, and a lot of personnel there. But once we no longer received grant funding for that, we pared down to tabletop exercises. But we're required to, and we do conduct them annually. So we're prepared for the role. We're prepared to collaborate with other government entities in the county and beyond, based on our previous agreements. But we do have some limitations of what we can do. And again, we have the ability to say no if we've been asked to do something that's going to be unsafe or we're unprepared for. Next slide. So that's all I've got. That's our contact information, Mark Sakaue and I am prepared to answer any questions. And Mark is prepared to answer the difficult ones.
Okay, I guess we can make about 3 or 4 minutes for questions, because we have an announcement that we have to get to as well. We're not. Okay. So Mike's not going to do his. Okay, all right. Unless you want me, so he's still not, is he not here? Okay, all right. Okay, so we have until we have about 7 minutes for questions. Any questions in the room, members in the room?
Yes.
Go, I'm sorry, Helen, go ahead.
Thank you. Say that the streets are flooded, electric wheelchairs don't run well with water, and you're completely cut off from any services because nobody knows you're in the building. The electricity goes off, so you can't get back in the building if you got out of the building. Is there any localized number or national number, county, city, that we could call or email, text, whatever, to make people aware that we are completely isolated?
Well, I touched on that pre-planned list a little bit. And so that's not a recommendation or is in existence as far as I know. Typically, if you live in the city, you would call the city 911 and fire or police would respond if they could. Now, I'll give you an example of how that doesn't work very well. In 1981, I worked for the Tulsa Police Department, and we had a flood. I'm tempted to say biblical proportions, but it was a flood that was worse than we expected and worse than we found, depending on where you're at. And so a number of alarm calls came in. And so officers were trying to get to the alarm calls, which turned out to be a bad idea because a number of cars got flooded and they were unable then to respond to the additional calls we got about people who were trapped, and some had fled to the attic of their house and they needed help because the water was still coming up. And so fire was limited because of limited personnel. Police obviously has limited personnel, but I heard on the radio officers trying to get to places and saying, no, I can't get it because this route's flooded, that route's flooded. And I actually got flooded myself trying to save the day going down the freeway. And so my point is, we can have all kinds of great intentions. We can have all kinds of planning, but it may overwhelm the resources. But before then, and this is why I mentioned earlier, it's important to recognize your risk early, have a plan beyond what the city or county can provide early. And if it requires, you think it's going to be an evacuation situation, then you should try to get out as soon as you can instead of as late as you can. Having friends or family members who can respond to help you are a good way to go, but some people don't have anybody. And so then all you can do is prepare the best you can and then call when you're overwhelmed. Your resources, your abilities are overwhelmed. But again, the sooner you do it, the more likely you are to get somebody to be able to come there and help you.
Okay, so there is no localized.
Hang on. We have to give the time for other possible questions, Helen.
Okay.
Anybody in the room for one more question? Joseph, go ahead.
Hello, this is Joe. So one of the things that played really good portrait of for individuals who are like vulnerable with severe disabilities is developing like a disaster preparedness plan. Is it possible to like create some kind of guide for individuals so that they can develop their own disaster plans?
Yes. Mark and I have talked about that as late as recent as today. And so if there are members who of the public who don't know how to prepare, need help, and they just need some guidance, we would be willing to to make ourselves available to assist in that.
Yeah, I think mine is too. All right, we're going to have to adjourn. It is 4:30. And we want to thank you, Doug, for giving us that informative report. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you. That person.